to welcome back to another episode of Ottawa Exposed. I'm David Creighton, the senior parliamentary columnist for the Western Standard. Very happy to be back here. What a week we've had here in Ottawa. And it's pretty cold outside because we're still dealing with that Ottawa winter, but it's pretty hot inside the House of Commons. The temperature's rising there because Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is still mired in a very big scandal. The China political election interference scandal. That's what it is. And it's increasingly looking like not only did China buy a minority government for Justin Trudeau in 2021, but that Justin Trudeau knew all about the Chinese funding. He knew all about the fact that China was targeting, identifying friendly candidates, liberal candidates. And Justin Trudeau apparently stood by and did nothing because it was going to benefit the Liberal Party and not necessarily Canada. So what happened yesterday in question period? Well, we were back after quite a break, actually, even though the House was sitting Monday, Tuesday. Things really got exciting yesterday as opposition leader Pierre Poilievre stood up in the House to ask the first question of the Prime Minister. And we're going to be seeing that exchange in a minute. But let me tell you, Poilievre has rarely been better in sparring with the Prime Minister. This was very effective stuff, extremely effective. And Justin Trudeau is quite frankly running scared. He set up all of these committees, groups that are going to apparently look into the election interference by China, but he is not committing himself to a public inquiry. Why? Because these other committees, these other groups, all they're going to do is meet in secret and report the information directly to the Prime Minister's office, and that information can be tampered with and redacted. It's not going to be a public inquiry. It's going to be a private inquiry. And this is exactly what a number of conservative MPs have been talking about this week. And Poilievre was talking about it yesterday. But Justin Trudeau has walked through innumerable scandals while he's been Prime Minister. He strutted through the SNC-Lavalin scandal like it was nothing at all, throwing other Liberal cabinet ministers under the bus or the Liberal machine. What about the We Charity? No big deal to Justin Trudeau. He's a generous guy. And if it's a charity, what could be wrong about that? In his personal life, there was that old sexual assault charge dating back to the early days before Trudeau was even in politics. He brushed that one aside, saying that the woman in question just didn't see things the way he did. And somehow, the guy who calls everybody racist, who thinks we live in a racist country of white supremacists, somehow survived the blackface scandal. He walked through that one too, smiling away, a little bit repentant at the start, but suggesting, hey, it's because I grew up in a racist city like Montreal. It's not my fault, it's their fault. And yet he still continues to call his opponents racist. But there's something about this Chinese scandal, this interference, this political interference about buying elections that's sticking to Mr. Teflon. Trudeau's not walking away from this one. And I tell you, he's going to get increasing questions, and he's being shown to be a man who did have the facts at his disposal, who did know. And he's being very reluctant to share that information. So I want to show you this clip. I think it's fantastic. It's from question period on March the 8th. That was yesterday as I record this, and it's quite interesting.
Position.
He's not interested in protecting the safety of the people serving this country. He's interested in protecting the Liberal Party of Canada. The question was how much his party got in illegal donations funneled from Beijing. I've asked the question twice now. He refuses to answer it. He distracts and now claims that he can't tell it because it would harm national security. Give me a break. It would harm his political career. Why doesn't he tell us how much the Liberal Party or its various arms received in money from Beijing? How much?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate and despicable that any member in this House would question the loyalty to Canada of any other member in this House. I understand the very real concerns that Canadians feel about foreign interference, and that's why we've created mechanisms to keep Canadians safe. But to suggest that anyone in this House isn't devoted to serving Canadians and keeping those who serve Canada in dangerous positions safe is quite disgusting.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, no drama lesson will distract from the question that I asked. The question was very clear. How much did the Liberal Party get in donations directed from Beijing? I've asked it multiple times. I find it incredible that he can't stand up and answer with a zero. Totally. I mean, if he knows for sure it didn't happen, if he's not been briefed to the contrary, he would say so right now. Yeah. But he's dodging the question. He's trying to engage in a dramatic distraction. So I will give him one more chance. Answer the question. How much money did his party get from the dictatorship in Beijing? How much?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I see the Leader of the Opposition trying to backtrack from his heinous and disgusting accusations of disloyalty to Canada of anyone in this House. And I'm pleased to see him back off from what was an absolutely despicable partisan approach. But it does go to the point that Canadians need to have confidence that the answers that they are seeking on foreign interference and on the integrity of our democratic institutions are being dealt with by experts. Now, there's two ways of doing that. One is by making sure that partisans and politicians of all parties get classified briefings on that, which the NSICOP does, and the other is to make sure independent experts.
The Honourable.
Pretty good stuff. I haven't seen a question period like that in quite a while. Mr. Polyev refers to drama. Well, that's pretty high drama. But that's Trudeau. He's being the drama teacher again, isn't he? Not being a prime minister. He's being the drama teacher again. And this is all nonsense. So what does Trudeau want to do? He doesn't want a public inquiry. I have to laugh at this. He wants something called an independent special rapporteur. Now, when's the last time you heard that that description for a public inquiry? Have you ever even heard of a independent special rapporteur? Not something we usually bandy about on the Hill. But Trudeau was talking about that. And I want to go to my next column that we're talking about today. And this was based on a fantastic interview I did with MP Michael Cooper, the Conservative MP for St. Albert, Edmonton. And he has been a leading MP in terms of going after answers on what Trudeau knew and when he knew it. Isn't it interesting we're using that phrase again? Where did that phrase really come from in recent memory, or at least recent history? Watergate. We talked about what did President Nixon know and when did he know it? That was used almost every day during the Watergate hearings in 1973. We're hearing that again. But I was really impressed with Mr. Cooper, who I've actually known for about 20 years. I knew Michael before he was an MP. He was always a dedicated guy who assiduously went after answers and was a good researcher. But he said about this Trudeau's idea of appointing this rapporteur, he says it's a complete smokescreen. You know, it's the opposite of what CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, wanted. They wanted the breath of fresh air to move in here to see what's going on, but not things done in secrecy. I mean, this is a huge problem. And so I'd like to show a very brief clip from that interview, because I think it's worthwhile to see what exactly Cooper's getting at here. Now, Michael, as I was preparing for this interview, the news never stops. I understand that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who has said he does not want a public inquiry, says he's willing to tolerate something called a special rapporteur. Does anyone even know what that is?
It's someone who's going to report back to the Prime Minister. And then what he has also announced is that NSICOP, which is a committee comprised of members of Parliament and senators, but that is not a parliamentary committee, that does not have the powers of parliamentary committees, including compelling witnesses, that meets in secret and that prepares a report that is redacted by the PMO to be tasked with getting to the bottom of Beijing's interference in the last two elections. It is a complete smokescreen. It is the opposite of what CSIS has called on the Prime Minister to do in the face of interference, and that is to provide sunshine and transparency. What he wants to do is bury it in a committee that meets behind closed doors, and that, again, significantly, that it is the PMO that ultimately redacts the report, even though I would submit, given what we know, the Prime Minister is in a conflict in this matter. There are real questions about what he knew, when he knew it, and what he failed to do in the face of Beijing's interference in the last two federal elections that took place under his watch as Prime Minister.
So there we have it. And Michael Cooper does indeed talk about what did Trudeau know, when did he know it, and why didn't he do anything about it? This is really the questions we need answers. And, there's rumors abounding right now on the Hill. In fact, conservative MP Michelle Rempel Garner has been talking about this quite a bit all week, that Trudeau is going to prorogue Parliament. In other words, shut it down for an indefinite period of time because things are getting a little too hot for him. Would he do that? You bet he would. But I hope he doesn't. I hope there's a shred of decency left in this man that will allow the truth to emerge. But I'm not sure that's going to happen. Now, one thing Cooper wants to hear is he wants the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, to appear before the committee that Cooper is working on right now, the PROC committee that is looking into Chinese interference. He wants Katie Telford to appear, and he wants her to answer some questions. Because last week we heard from the Privy Council Office National Security Advisor, which I didn't even know we had, but Jody Thomas was testifying in front of that committee, and Cooper asked her some very pertinent questions. And the National Security Advisor said, yes, Trudeau had been briefed multiple times. So let's hear the same information from Katie Telford, his Chief of Staff. Let's find out what's going on here. Anyway, I've got to move on from China. But believe me, this story is going to continue to unravel because there's lots of information here. And I want to move to another world story, or U.S. story. You might recall I recently interviewed the legendary Seymour Hersh, the investigative journalist who has been responsible for some of the biggest political exposés and military exposés over the last 50 years. Anyway, we had a fantastic conversation, but I spoke to Cy Hersh yesterday after a report came out this week. Somewhere from the White House, it was a official source or official sources from somewhere, presumably in the State Department or the White House. But the New York Times, which got the story, wouldn't say exactly who they were. But the Times reported that, remember that Nord Stream pipeline explosion that Seymour Hersh said Joe Biden was behind, that the United States blew it up in order to keep Europe on side in the war against Russia, to keep them backing Ukraine? Well, we finally heard a real response from the White House, and I'm sure it was the White House who said this, and that it was, guess what, a pro-Ukrainian group. Now, what does that mean? That can mean, well, just about anything. In fact, a pro-Ukrainian group could mean the State Department, could mean Joe Biden's cabinet. It could mean the White House because they're a pro-Ukrainian group. But we're supposed to believe that a bunch of people were on a yacht. They dove off the yacht. They went down and they blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Now, as Seymour Hersh was reminding me, and I'm ex-military, and I actually knew a diver who lost her life doing this kind of dangerous work. Seymour Hersh told me yesterday that you have to train and train for this kind of mission. You don't just jump off a yacht, go down to the bottom of the Baltic Sea, plant explosives, and get the heck out of there. No, it's a difficult operation. That is something Navy SEALs or the U.S. Navy divers have to do. This is not an easy task. And for them to say, oh, yeah, this pro-Ukrainian group just got off their yacht, went down to the bottom of the sea and did the job. Hersh was laughing. I mean, literally laughing at this because he said he was getting all kinds of media calls when this report came out. And he was telling people, well, I always thought Ethiopia or Somalia did it. That's how ludicrous this explanation is. This report is just plain fantasy. So that's for that story. That continues to unravel in the face of Joe Biden, by the way. And I want to move to another story closer to home. I found this hard to believe that the Department of National Defense / Canadian Armed Forces is shoving something called an anti-racism toolkit in the faces and down the throats of our men and women in uniform. Now, don't they have better things to do than navel gaze about white supremacy and racism? Yeah, I'm sure you can find a white supremacist or a racist if you look hard enough under every bed in the military. But the military is not there to do that. The military is there to defend Canada and maintain our collective defense and security agreements. That means NORAD, it means NATO, it means defending the continent of North America and defending Canada. The military should not be a laboratory for social experimentation. But guess what? It's absolutely incredible, some of the questions they're asking here. And I remember when I was in the military as a public affairs officer, we used to always have to deal with quotas. How it was nice to have quotas. But this is what really makes me mad about this, though. I mean, according to this anti-racism toolkit, people who are racist do not believe in equality of all persons or believe in equality but not equity. For example, do not support reconciliation efforts. So if you don't support Trudeau's reconciliation, you're racist. Furthermore, people who are racist deny the existence of unconscious bias and refuse to engage in self-reflection and education to address their own biases and racist beliefs. So in other words, if I don't believe I'm racist, I'm racist. Now this kind of garbage, sewage water, does not belong in the military. Get rid of it, please. We do not need this kind of indoctrination. Critical race theory, which teaches that there's victims and there's winners in society. And if you're white, you're a winner. If you're not white, you're a loser. And you're part of a underclass slave class. This is absolute nonsense. And this anti-racism toolkit says that we should not be colorblind. Let me tell you, that was the foundation of Martin Luther King. When he fought racism in the integrated or the non-integrated, the segregated South, he talked about the need to be colorblind, to judge people on the basis of their characters, not on the color of their skin. That's what colorblind means. And that's where we've got to get back to. Not these idiotic ideas of white fragility and white privilege and critical race theory. It's all nonsense and it doesn't belong in the military. Now, quickly, I want to go to my last item here. Talking about racial bias. The Prime Minister is not content to call everybody he doesn't agree with a racist. He likes to push racist theories. And he says it would be a great idea if the next commissioner of the RCMP were an Indigenous person. I have no problem with an Indigenous person being an RCMP commissioner, if that person is qualified first. You don't hire somebody on the basis of their race or their skin color or ethnicity. You hire them if they're the best person to do the job. And that's what we have to remember. And this is what Trudeau forgets right away. That we don't hire people on the basis of their race or ethnicity or even their gender. We hire people, male or female, black or white, on the basis of their competence and their ability to do the job. That is what should qualify somebody to be the next RCMP commissioner. But believe me, that's not what Trudeau is thinking of. He never misses an opportunity, never misses a beat to promote his fetid idea of identity politics. That is what drives the man, and he thinks it's what the key to the Liberals winning another election. I don't know if Justin Trudeau is going to even be the leader of the Liberal Party in the next election. He is being completely subsumed and consumed by this Chinese election interference scandal, and he is on the run. So look for diversion after diversion coming from the Prime Minister. You know, I'm not keen on the way the opposition is talking about Beijing, 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 Beijing instead of China, but I understand why they're doing it. Because as soon as you say China, here creeps in Justin Trudeau to say, oh, you're saying China because you don't like Chinese people or you don't like Chinese Canadians. You have a bias or a racial bias against Asian Canadians. So that's why the opposition is saying Beijing, 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 Beijing. I'm not going to say that because I don't care what Trudeau wants to imagine about me or call what kind of names he wants to call me. I'm going to call it the China political interference scandal, just like I called the COVID-19 virus the Chinese virus, because it came from there, as Donald Trump said. Anyway, that's all for today. Thanks for joining Ottawa Exposed. I'm David Creighton, senior parliamentary columnist for the Western Standard. Don't forget to subscribe to the Western Standard at www.westernstandard.news. It is the best publication out there to read. And bye for now.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny. You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99